Hey guys, this is the Big Tripper. I know this isn't the voice you're used to hearing. This is my actual voice. It's not the AI voice that I've been using for all my videos. So I've decided to make this video in my real voice. I just want to try something new. I want to see how it goes. There's been a lot of people saying that they would rather have a real voice instead of an AI voice. So let me know if you guys like this video, or if you would rather have the AI voice back. Sorry for my absence lately. I am in school for pharmaceutical chemistry, so it has been a lot, but I am off for the summer now, so hopefully we could start getting these videos uploaded again on a weekly basis. And it just makes me so happy that all you guys are enjoying these videos. I think we're at 115 subscribers now, which is it's awesome. It's amazing. And I'm just so happy that you guys are enjoying these videos. All right, peace. Wide-Eyed Dreaming, a diphenhydramine trip report uploaded to Arrowhead on October 16th, 2007 by user named Alyosha. It's a 500 milligram report. Body weight is 170 pounds. Several of my regular tripping companions gathered at our friend M's house at around 5:30 in the afternoon, sometime in mid-July. With an empty house until 2 in the morning, we figured it would be fun to trip, but wanted something that didn't last as long as DXM, which was one of our staple drugs. We finally agreed on diphenhydramine after one of our friends, S, was saying how easy it is to find. So we went and procured 3 boxes of 48 25 milligram capsules. Once we got back, we went on the porch and broke open some soda, divided the pills up. As I remember, 5 people decided to trip, myself included. It was my first time. We decided to take 20 pills, each 500 milligrams. The 5th tripper, A, went with a smaller dose of 14 capsules, 350 milligrams. I ingested all 20 of the 25 milligram capsules over the course of some 3 minutes or so. I decided to wait for the trip to come on. It took a terribly long time, about an hour or more, before I noticed any serious change. And during that time, to speed the process of coming up, I did jumping jacks and watched the sun start to go down. About 45 minutes after ingestion, our friend B showed up at the house, along with some other people and an absurd amount of marijuana. B broke up a couple bowls, and we shared them between 6 or 7 people. And during this process, I kept wandering in and out of the house, trying to find M and get him to smoke with us. I finally found M and told him to go and smoke, then sat down on the living room couch. And by this point, just over an hour in, I felt a bit drunk while we were walking, and I had a hard time pulling my thoughts together enough to act on them. I managed to fight off conclusion enough so I could go back into the house and smoke a bit more. Then everything became a blur. I was confused and really took a hold when people started to get up and leave. I wasn't able to tell who left the house, and everything seemed very frantic as I fought to process what was going on around me. Visual and auditory hallucinations hadn't started yet, but the drunkenness had definitely hit. I finally started to figure out what was going on after the house started to clear out, leaving just me, M, his girlfriend, K, A, and B. I sat on the couch and talked to A for a little while trying to keep tabs on how his trip was going. At about that time, my first auditory hallucinations started. A methodical clicking sound started coming from the ceiling. I attributed it to the light fixture above me and simply tried to ignore it. I quickly followed the auditory hallucinations, and then my vision started to change. All things around me became very dreamlike and somewhat distant, and everything started to look a bit darker, as though the lights indoors had become candles with their darker, more yellow-orange glow. After a little bit of talking, I was called upon to drive B back to his house. The drive there wasn't too bad. It was only about 5 minutes to the house, but I had a hard time seeing in the dark. The contrast between light and dark seemed diminished. Lights were more dull and yellow, and it made me think my headlights weren't working. That aside, though, I had no difficulty getting to B's house. When I left B's house, the visual hallucinations started. Everyone talks about diphenhydramine and the very realistic visuals, at least realistic in your impressionable drunken state, but I found that they were less potent than expected. Everything not real had a very transparent, wispy quality to it. Anyways, I started back, and the first thing I noticed was a wasp flying around in my car. It was bothering me a bit, so I pulled over, only to find out that when I stopped, it was gone. I began to start understanding how bad of an idea it was to drive in this state. Shaken up, I waited to calm down before continuing on. Just after I got back on the road, I passed a street light that had gone out. Around the base of it seemed to be a huge dark gray sheet flapping in the wind. I slowed down and asked aloud, "Is that a flag?" Then I realized that I could see the street light underneath the sheet and concluded that it was a hallucination. Now very paranoid about how hard I was tripping, I resolved to focus solely on driving. The way back seemed like it took forever. Processing of things like stop signs seemed to take twice the effort, and I had to constantly remind myself out loud about the different traffic laws I needed to obey. Still, I was able to rationalize my way through the drive and returned safely to M's house. I came back inside to find that M had taken A home as well, leaving just me, M, and K in the house. I was trying to play a game of solitaire on the computer in the house so I could calm down, but I couldn't focus on the game and resorted to just watching the screen and listening to M and K talk. I don't know how long that took. I lost track of time, but I suddenly became aware that everything was quiet. I looked over at Kay, sitting next to me at the desk in a recliner, and when I did, I heard a loud crash coming from behind the computer. I immediately concluded that his speakers had just fallen behind the desk, so I wobbled to my feet and tried to desperately find the fallen speakers, knocking over a lamp in the process. After a good 5 minutes, M got up and came over to ask what I was doing. I stammered out something about how he needed to help me because his speaker just fell. He looked, pronounced everything was normal, and told me to go sit back down. Hallucinations again. I sat back down and picked up the photograph that had fallen. The glass over the picture seemed to be a rippling rainbow, like a bunch of gasoline spilled in a pool of water. I watched for a moment, and then I put the photograph down. A dark gray-black ball appeared in my peripheral vision. I tried to focus on the ball, but it disappeared whenever I looked away from the computer screen. I went through this process several times, amused at how the ball appeared and disappeared. Finally, it vanished, and I went back to my solitaire game. At this time, I was feeling a bit more coordinated mentally, and got the feeling that I was starting to come down, or at least was nearing the end of the trip's peak. I managed to play a few rounds of solitaire, and felt relieved when I wasn't so drunken anymore. The mental coordination also helped me hold it together around other visual hallucinations, which put me in the place of a more controlled observer in my mind's wild ride. At one point during the solitaire game, I looked at the photograph again and found it crawling with little transparent insects, something like centipedes with 4 pinchers in the place of front legs. I actually watched them for a while, surprisingly calm because I knew they were a hallucination. I heard something under the desk and looked down to see an arm from the elbow down starting to project out from one of the electrical outlets. Like all the other hallucinations, it had a dull and gray color to it, and I could fairly see the carpeting through the forearm. The hand moved very rapidly, almost too fast for me to follow, in a series of hand gestures. The irregular stop-and-go motion reminded me of the way insects move. And on the sheet, flapping in the wind, it changed the position, holding rigid for a moment before moving again. Still surreal as it was, I simply mused at what I was seeing. Then, after it disappeared, I turned and told M and K about it. They were both amazed that I had seen something that strange, and we talked about what I had seen along with M's past trip experiences until I was almost completely down. The visual hallucinations stopped after seeing the arm, and the distortion in light, quality, and contrast gradually faded over the course of around half an hour, though a slight distortion lingered. I had enough sense to check the clock and found that it was just after 12:30, and it had been just under 6 hours since I took the pills. I've come down completely and felt mentally exhausted, most likely due to the drive back from B's house. I waited for about 15 minutes, then left for my own house, while Emma took Kay back to her home. And thankfully, I had no other hallucinations or ill effects on the way back to my house, although some of the drab lighting effects would come and go for the rest of the night. For the remainder of the week, I had occasional sudden hallucinations, mostly moving black and gray dots that would appear and disappear just a fraction of a second. My hands were also very shaky, and feelings of exhaustion persisted for at least 36 hours after I had come down. Still, all in all, it wasn't a bad first experience.